experience of what racism is in America. But even folks who are maximally thoughtful about it almost never think about race in relation to themselves as white people.
3. Without policy actions to remedy it, the racial wealth gap will be significantly greater in the next generation because of the differential impacts of the Great Recession. As a result, the financial crisis, the racial wealth gap will continue to grow well into the next generation. Its economic trends had continued without the shock of the Great Recession. The ratio of white to black median wealth would have been forecast to drop from 4.4 times greater in 1999 to 4.0 times greater by 2031.
Excuse me. All workers punch in at the rear entrance.
He's with me.
That don't make any difference.
And in fact, a lot of white people have a revulsion or a resistance to thinking of race as even something that they possess or a label that would be applied to them.
I need you to understand this so-called liberal or so-called ally to us still refuse to identify the wickedness in these Europeans or his own people behavior by lying and saying that they did not think of themselves as a race, when you can clearly see at every level they established themselves as a race that is different than us as black people, and that their race should be superior and that we should be subjected to a lower level of a people.
Do you know who I am?
No, sir.
I'm Dr. Blaylock, Chief Surgical Professor.
Well, I'm sorry, Dr. Blaylock, but that's the rules.
I'll meet you in the labs, Vivian.
So have you felt that resistance throughout your life?
You can see as he walked through the halls the shocks on the white people's faces that this black man has been able to break all of the glass ceilings that they had placed upon him, especially at this time when Jim Crow was at its height.
Where do you think it comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely certainly, I don't come from a lot of money, and I went to a private university. So I feel like, particularly in college, right, I would be like, but what did I get for being white?
You're one of the few women doctors I've seen here.
Well, at least they let me in through the front door.
So for him to say that white people did not think of themselves as a race when they had seen or perceived that they was the only person that's supposed to be in that specific environment because of the social limitations that they had placed on black Americans would be a lie. Why would he make up such a lie? But given the impact on black family wealth of the financial crisis by 2031, the racial wealth gap will instead grow. The typical white household wealth is projected to be 4.5 times that of the typical black household wealth. This increased disparities will be even more profound from the perspective of home equity wealth without the Great Recession, from equity values for the blacks and white families at the same income and educational level, with headed towards parity by 2050 as a result of the Great Recession. However, the gap between blacks and whites home equity will likely remain large decades into the future.
And then, you get some more experience in the world and you understand, like, oh, it works really differently for people who aren't white. And for me,
Excuse me? Good morning. Where do you think I could find someone to help us clean up the lab, doctor?
Who do you think you're talking to?
We have to understand that government policies has subjected black people to such a lower level of society that the mere fact that this black man spoke to this doctor upset this white man. He was disgusted that this black man had the audacity to speak to him at all.
I'm not sure. I'm Vivian Thomas. I work for Dr. Blaylock running his lab.
I'm Dr. Edgar V. Hecker, Director of Laboratories. I'd like some coffee and a donut.
Doctor? There must be a mix-up.
Listen, you, I won't stand for insolence. We'll see about this.
And him speaking to him at all was a sign of disrespect.
Me, like the project of doing the sort of studying of the white bonus was kind of like, well, if we even take away these sort of soft privilege things that we talk about and instead just focus on like dollars and cents.
I want you to keep in mind what she considers to be soft privileges is the right to be treated with human dignity. What she considers to be soft privileges is the right to live up to your full potential. What she considers to be soft privileges would be equal pay. One of the most important markers of economic opportunity is a family's ability to support its children's economic future by helping to pay for college or down payments on a home or by leaving an inheritance. Deep losses to a family's wealth, especially losses to home equity wealth, can drastically diminish the ability to assist children in these ways, which is why understanding the effects of the Great Recession on the next generation is so important.
Right. So the white bonus is the amount of money that you've gotten because of racism when you're a white person, right?
Oh, I get the check every year. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know we all get a direct check, right? No.
No, I mean, yeah. Well, I have not received such a check. So what do you?
Hey, what you giving him extra for? What's wrong with me?
Nothing minding your own business wouldn't cure.
You got that white coat. You just a class 3, work the same as me. In fact, I got 2 years seniority on you. I'm making more than you. I don't think you some kind of big shot around here.
So you cannot separate those so-called soft privileges from the amount of money that Europeans were able to receive, because those soft privileges had create value within themselves.
Excuse me, buddy. Class 3, what does that mean?
It means salary grade.
And ma'am, and this here, what's this?
Job classification.
What is class 3?
Maintenance worker.
I'm a lab technician. That can't be.
Vivian Thomas. Okay, here we go. Vivian Thomas, class 3. Thank you.
What do you mean by that bonus?
Right. So the way that I measure it in the book is I say, okay, well, how much money did I or the people that I was profiling in the book, how much have we gotten from our families since we left home? And how likely is it that our families would have had that money to give us if they weren't white, right? So that
access to certain environments, conditions, and positions create wealth within themselves. So the limitation of various brothers, regardless of skill set, to access to various positions has a compounding effect on the Black community for generations.
just means going back through each family's history and the events in the person's life and saying, okay, like, just how likely is it, right? Like, this is not, I'm not proving this at the level of social science. I'm not sort of proving it in a courtroom, but just.
Did something happen?
Yes, I obtained a raise for you, $25 extra a month on top of what you're already making. It's $300 for the whole year. Will that be sufficient?
What job classification?
Surgical technician. I got you promoted.
Promoted to what he already does. Excuse me.
Sort of going, all right, well, for me, for example, when my grandfather passed away, I inherited $25,000. That was really helpful for me at the time. Now, this is not the kind of money, right, that a lot of my classmates at the private university are getting from their families, right? It's much smaller. But for me, it was significant. And,
and the racial effects appears to be profound. As this report finds, the Great Recession will continue to impact Black families more severely in the future in terms of lost potential wealth. By 2031, white wealth is forecast to be 31% below what it would have been without the Great Recession, while Black wealth is down almost 40% for a typical Black family. Median wealth in 2031 will be almost $98,000 lower than it would have been without the Great Recession.
Now you can pay your rent and put all your focus on our research. Vivian, back there in the lab with Pontius, what did you do?
What you suggested, partial fistula. Stitch the main arteries and veins together end to end in 2 lobes of the lungs.
We created a blue baby's heart in that dog.
Did we?
Now we have our disease model, we can find a cure. And much as I enjoyed coming here to see you, would you mind terribly if I got you a telephone?
No, not at all. Thank you.
then go, okay, well, how did my grandfather have that money? Right. Well, he worked as a banker in mid-century America, right, at a time when, when he went into banking in 1930, in the entire country, there were only 80 Black bankers. Right. And so pretty much, right, he had that job because he was white in part.
These findings offer an important lens for understanding the economic recovery and for charting a path forward. The financial crisis was sparked by a housing market collapse that had its roots in racial discrimination. Its results in mass foreclosures that impacted racial minorities with disproportionate forcities. And the after effects of the Great Recession continues to deepen racial inequalities. Policymakers should consider these findings in crafting economic intervention.
And then also, right, he bought a house in the 30s that had a racial covenant on it. So if he had been a Black person, he would not have legally been allowed to live in that home and to build the wealth that he had right through that house.
The ongoing effects of the housing crisis on the racial wealth gap have implications for several pressing policies areas, including reforms of the secondary mortgage market, access to credit, and regulation.
So I think, when I started looking at my white bonus, was like, well, like, it's pretty clear, like any money from that grandfather, right, that's tied to his being white. And I didn't do anything to make that the case, right? But I'm still benefiting from it.
Yeah. I also think sometimes, even if you haven't received a check like that, there's a more invisible form of getting that money. I mean, I never in my 20s, after I graduated college, received a check from my parents for any reason other than a birthday gift. And, sometimes the birthday gifts are, not insignificant, but, whatever. It's